In the shattered remains of the lands between, where demigods war over fragments of power and the Erd Tree looms over a dying world, information becomes the most valuable currency. Within the sanctuary of the Round Table Hold, a place suspended between reality and a dream, one man sits surrounded by endless tomes and whispered secrets. He is Sir Gideon Ofnir, and he calls himself the All-Knowing. But titles in the lands between are rarely what they seem, and the truth behind Gideon's omniscience is far more sinister than the scholarly facade he presents to the world. When you arrive at the Round Table Hold, guided by Melena's mysterious intervention, Gideon stands near the site of grace, watching. His armor gleams with peculiar decorations, eyes and ears wrought in gold adorning his chest and helmet. He greets you with cold dismissal, calling you a mere visitor, a house guest, tolerated but not welcomed. You are not yet worthy of his knowledge, he declares. You must prove yourself by claiming a great rune, by receiving the wisdom of the two fingers. Only then will you become a true member of the Round Table, worthy of the secrets he has gathered. This initial meeting establishes Gideon's character perfectly. He is a man who hoards information, who treats knowledge as power to be rationed and controlled, as a tarnished who wishes to stand before the Elden Ring and become Elden Lord. He accumulates knowledge, to be all-knowing, as he himself states. The pursuit of knowledge is without end, for knowledge is never a thing complete. Thus, he maintains the mantle of all-knowing. It is a title he gives himself, an aspiration rather than an achievement, a goal that drives every action he takes within the lands between. Yet, for all his claims of wisdom, Gideon rarely leaves his study within the Round Table Hold. After your first encounter, he retreats to his room, surrounded by books and scrolls, absorbed in endless reading. He becomes your primary source of information about the Shard-Bearers, the demigods who claimed fragments of the Elden Ring for themselves. He knows their locations, their histories, their natures. He can tell you of Godric the Grafted, Lord of Stormvale, that pitiful runt of the golden lineage who grafts the limbs of Tarnished onto his own body in desperate pursuit of power. He speaks of General Radon, the mighty conqueror who halted the very stars in their courses. He describes Praetor Rykard, Lord of the Volcano Manor, who fed himself to an ancient serpent in an act of supreme blasphemy. He warns you of Morgoth the Grace-Given, the veiled monarch who protects Leyndell with fanatical devotion. But how does a man who never leaves his study know so much? How does someone sequestered in a pocket dimension outside normal space and time gather intelligence on events unfolding across the vast expanse of the lands between? The answer lies not in supernatural omniscience, but in something far more practical and far more disturbing. Gideon Ofnir has built a vast network of informants, agents, and spies who serve as his eyes and ears throughout the realm. They are the true source of his knowledge, the foundation upon which his reputation rests. The evidence of this network appears throughout your journey, often in places of death and despair. It marks itself with a distinctive insignia, an eye rendered in careful detail, a symbol that appears on the armor of those who serve as Gideon's watchers. The eye surcoat, as it is called, bears this mark prominently. The item description reads clearly: brown surcoat draped over chainmail. The insignia emblazoned on the front marks out the wearer as the eyes and ears of Sir Gideon, the all-knowing. This is not metaphorical language. These are literal agents, human spies sent into dangerous territories to observe, to listen, to report back whatever intelligence they can gather about the shard bearers and their domains. Consider the implications of such a network. Gideon sits safely in the round table hold, never risking his own life, never facing the horrors that await in Caelid, or the dangers lurking in the volcano manor. Instead, he sends others to do his dangerous work. They venture into enemy territory, infiltrate hostile factions, observe from shadows, and hope to return with their lives and their information intact. Many, as we will discover, never return at all. They die in service to Gideon's ambitions, their bodies left in forgotten corners of the lands between, their sacrifices unmarked and unremembered, except as another data point in the all-knowing's endless accumulation of facts. This is the reality behind Gideon Ofnir's title. He is not truly all-knowing. He is all-hearing, as Latenna, the Albinaric woman, bitterly names him. He listens to reports from his agents. He reads their written observations. He interrogates survivors. He pieces together a picture of the world from countless fragments of second-hand information, building a mosaic of knowledge from the blood and suffering of others. It is a spy network in the truest sense, an intelligence apparatus that rivals anything a medieval lord might have assembled, adapted for the strange reality of the shattered lands between. Throughout your journey, you will encounter the remnants of this network. You will meet his agents, both living and dead. You will find their equipment in places they should never have been able to reach. You will witness the consequences of his intelligence operations, the lives destroyed by his pursuit of information. And eventually, you will come to understand that Gideon's knowledge comes with a terrible price, paid not by him, but by those who serve him, willingly or otherwise. The story of Gideon's spy network is ultimately the story of information in the lands between, of how knowledge is gathered, controlled, and weaponized in service of ambition. It is the tale of agents who died pursuing secrets, of family members manipulated for intelligence purposes, of old friendships destroyed by the pursuit of power. It reveals the darker side of the Round Table Hold, that supposed sanctuary for tarnished, showing it as a place where even fellowship is transactional, where even familial bonds are tools to be exploited. As you progress deeper into the world, as you claim more great runes and defeat more shard bearers, Gideon's knowledge grows. He learns what you have accomplished, often before you can report to him. He rewards you for bringing him information about hidden demigods, for revealing the locations of Moog, Lord of Blood, or Melania, Blade of Miquella, or the elusive Miquella himself. But with each revelation, with each piece of intelligence you provide, you become complicit in his network. You become, in a sense, one of his agents, feeding information back to the center of his web. This relationship defines much of your interaction with the Round Table Hold. Gideon presents himself as a mentor, a source of guidance for your journey toward becoming Elden Lord. He shares his knowledge freely once you have proven yourself worthy. He seems to be helping you achieve your goal. Yet, there is always an undercurrent of something else, a sense that you are being used, that your victories serve purposes beyond your own ambitions. When Gideon sends you information about the Shard Bearers, is he truly helping you become Elden Lord, or is he sending you as his most capable agent, trusting you to succeed where other spies have failed? The architecture of Gideon's spy network is elaborate and multi-layered. At the lowest level, you have the anonymous informants, the people wearing the eye surcoat who venture into hostile territory with nothing but their wits and their dedication to Gideon's cause. Above them, you have more valued agents, people with names and identities, individuals Gideon trusts with more complex operations. At the very top, closest to Gideon himself, you find his most intimate connections, the people bound to him not just by duty, but by personal relationships, by adoption or old friendship or shared history. Understanding this network requires examining each layer, each agent, and each operation. We must look at the silent guardian who stands outside Gideon's door, the armored figure who speaks no words but watches everything. We must investigate the mysterious corpse found in Rykard's arena, wearing Gideon's insignia, and piece together how that spy met his end. We must trace the tragic story of Nepheli Loux, the warrior woman Gideon adopted as his daughter, and understand how he manipulated her for his intelligence needs. We must uncover his past connections to Dolores, the Silent Hunter, and learn what drove Gideon and the preceptor Seluvis to become enemies. Beyond the human agents, we must also consider the more esoteric theories about how Gideon gathers intelligence. Some scholars in the lands between believe he uses supernatural means, that the scarabs scattered throughout the realm serve as his remote surveillance devices, their eye-marked carapaces serving as windows through which he can observe distant events. Others suggest he has made pacts with entities beyond human understanding, trading favors for forbidden knowledge. Still, others believe his connection to the two fingers grants him access to information no mortal should possess. The truth, as always in the lands between, is likely more complex than any single explanation. Gideon probably employs multiple methods of intelligence gathering, from mundane human surveillance to arcane divination, from studying ancient texts to interrogating captured enemies. His claim to be all-knowing is aspirational, but it is not entirely baseless. He genuinely does possess vast stores of information, accumulated through years of dedicated effort and the sacrifice of countless agents. Yet, for all his knowledge, Gideon remains fundamentally limited. There are things he does not know, cannot know, and will never know. The location of Miquella eludes him until you reveal it by progressing through the Halig tree. The true name of Ronnie's schemes remains hidden from him. The depths of Mogwen Palace remain mysterious until you venture there yourself. Gideon's network, for all its reach, cannot penetrate every secret. Some truths remain forever beyond his grasp, some locations forever closed to his spies. This limitation becomes crucial to understanding Gideon's character. His title is aspirational because perfect knowledge is impossible. The pursuit of knowledge is without end, for knowledge is never a thing complete. He will always be chasing the next secret, the next revelation, the next piece of intelligence that might finally give him the comprehensive understanding he seeks. It is an addiction, a compulsion that drives him to ever more desperate measures, ever more ruthless operations, ever more terrible sacrifices in pursuit of information. And in the end, when he finally glimpses something truly significant, when he learns the will of Queen Marika the Eternal through his communion with the two fingers, the knowledge breaks him. What he discovers in that exchange changes everything, transforms him from your ally into your final obstacle before the Erd Tree. The all-knowing, who spent his entire existence pursuing truth, finds a truth he cannot accept, cannot reconcile with his ambitions. It shatters his belief in the possibility of becoming Elden Lord, convinces him that the struggle itself is the point, that Marika wishes for the Tarnished to strive eternally without ever achieving their goal. This is where Gideon's story truly becomes tragic. The spy master, the information broker, the man who built an entire intelligence network in service of becoming Elden Lord, learns something that makes him believe lordship is impossible. And so, he becomes the very thing he once fought against. He becomes an obstacle, a barrier, a boss you must defeat to progress. The mentor becomes the enemy. The source of knowledge becomes the guardian of ignorance, standing in your path not to test you, but to stop you, to prevent you from reaching the throne, because he believes no one should reach it, because the truth he learned has convinced him that lordship itself is a lie. Understanding Gideon Ofnir's spy network is essential to understanding the man himself, to grasping the tragedy of his character. He is not simply an antagonist who betrays you at the end. He is a deeply flawed individual who mistakes information for wisdom, who confuses the accumulation of facts with genuine understanding, who builds an empire of surveillance, but never truly sees the human cost of his intelligence operations. He uses people, discards them when they are no longer useful, and never questions whether his pursuit of knowledge justifies the suffering he causes. The network he builds is impressive in its scope and terrible in its implications. It reveals the length to which ambitious people will go in the lands between, the way even supposed sanctuaries like the Round Table hold hide darker purposes, the manner in which even family and friendship become tools to be exploited. It shows us that in a world of demigods and dragons, of ancient curses and divine powers, sometimes the most dangerous threats come from ordinary human ambition, from people willing to sacrifice others in pursuit of their goals. So let us examine this network in detail. Let us trace each thread of Gideon's web, from the silent guardian at his door to the corpse in Rykard's arena, from his adopted daughter to his former friend. Let us understand how the all-knowing built his apparatus of surveillance, how he gathered his intelligence, and why he ultimately failed to achieve his ambitions despite possessing more information than perhaps anyone else in the lands between. Let us discover the truth behind the spy network of Sir Gideon Ofnir, the man who would be all-knowing, but succeeded only in being all-consuming. Every intelligence network requires structure, hierarchy, and methodology. Gideon Ofnir's apparatus is no exception, though it operates under the unique constraints of the shattered lands between. Unlike a traditional spy network serving a kingdom or empire, Gideon's organization exists in service of a single individual's ambition, built not to protect a nation, but to elevate one tarnished to the position of Elden Lord. This singular focus shapes every aspect of how the network functions, from recruitment to operations to the ultimate disposition of intelligence gathered. The foundation of any spy network is recruitment, and Gideon's methods here reveal much about his character. He does not simply hire mercenaries or bribe informants, though he certainly employs both tactics when necessary. Instead, he cultivates relationships of dependency and obligation. He presents himself as a mentor, a source of wisdom and guidance for tarnished who have lost their way. The Round Table hold itself serves as a recruitment ground, a place where ambitious tarnished gather, where the lost and desperate seek direction, where those who dream of lordship come looking for any advantage. Consider how he operates within the Round Table hold itself. When you first arrive, he dismisses you as unworthy, establishing himself as the gatekeeper of valuable information. Only after you prove yourself by claiming a great rune does he acknowledge you as an equal, as someone worthy of his attention. This creates a power dynamic where those who want his knowledge must first demonstrate their value, must show they can accomplish difficult tasks, and must prove they are capable agents who can serve his purposes. It is a classic intelligence recruitment technique, identifying capable individuals and creating a sense of obligation through the provision of valuable information. The physical infrastructure of his network centers on the Round Table Hold, but extends throughout the lands between, through various safe houses, contact points, and observation posts. His agents presumably report back through channels we never directly witness, using the mysterious properties of the Round Table Hold itself to traverse distances that should be impossible. The hold exists in a strange pocket dimension, accessible from sites of grace throughout the realm, which suggests Gideon's agents could potentially use similar methods to maintain communication, despite the vast and dangerous territories separating them from their spy master. The eye surcoat serves as the primary identifier of Gideon's agents, a deliberate choice that reveals much about his methodology. Unlike covert operatives who hide their allegiance, many of Gideon's spies wear their affiliation openly, marked with the distinctive eye insignia. This suggests several tactical considerations. First, it may provide protection in some contexts, marking the wearer as connected to the powerful figure of the Round Table Hold, someone whose death might bring consequences. Second, it facilitates coordination between agents who might encounter each other in the field, allowing them to identify fellow operatives. Third, it serves as propaganda, spreading the idea of Gideon's omnipresence, making people throughout the lands between aware that the all-knowing has eyes everywhere. Yet wearing such an obvious marker also comes with tremendous risk. Any enemy of Gideon, any faction that opposes the Round Table Hold, would immediately recognize an agent wearing the eye surcoat. It makes infiltration nearly impossible, turns every mission into a known operation, broadcasts your allegiance to anyone who might wish you harm. The fact that Gideon's agents wear this insignia despite these risks suggests either foolish loyalty or calculated strategy. Perhaps Gideon values the psychological impact of his symbol more than the safety of individual agents. Perhaps he has enough agents that losing some to enemy action is acceptable. Or perhaps the eye surcoat serves multiple purposes we do not fully understand. The types of intelligence Gideon seeks reveal the network's priorities. He focuses primarily on the shard bearers, the demigods who hold great runes. He wants to know their locations, their capabilities, their weaknesses, and their plans. This makes strategic sense for someone hoping to become Elden Lord. To claim the Elden Ring, you must first gather enough great runes to enter Leyndell. To gather great runes, you must defeat the shard bearers. Therefore, intelligence about the shard bearers is the most valuable commodity in the lands between for anyone of lordly ambition. But Gideon's intelligence gathering extends beyond just the shard bearers. He seeks information about hidden demigods, about Miquella in the Halig Tree and Moog in his palace. He wants to know about Ronnie's schemes, though he struggles to penetrate her inner circle. He collects information about the two fingers, about the greater will, about the fundamental nature of the Golden Order itself. His reading and his study suggests he pursues historical knowledge as well, trying to understand the past to better predict the future, to find patterns in the chaos of the shattering. The methods his agents employ likely vary depending on the target and the type of intelligence sought. Some operations probably involve direct observation, with agents positioned to watch movements of shard bearers and their forces. Other missions might require infiltration, with spies joining hostile factions to gather information from within. Still, others could involve interrogation of captured enemies or deserters, extracting information through conversation or coercion. And certainly some intelligence comes from more mundane sources, from traders and travelers, from refugees and survivors, from anyone who has witnessed relevant events and can be persuaded or paid to share what they know. Gideon also employs a more controversial method, using family members and close associates as intelligence assets. His adoption of Nepheli Loux was not purely altruistic. She becomes one of his most valuable agents, a powerful warrior capable of taking on shard bearers in direct combat, someone he can send into the most dangerous situations. The description of their relationship makes clear he took advantage of her youthful credulity, molding her into a tool for his purposes while presenting it as paternal care. This ruthless pragmatism, this willingness to use personal relationships for intelligence purposes, defines Gideon's approach to his network. The network's operational security appears mixed at best. On one hand, Gideon maintains operational compartmentalization, with most agents probably knowing little beyond their specific mission. He guards the most sensitive information closely, sharing it only with those who have proven themselves trustworthy through repeated service. He operates from a secure location in the Round Table Hold, protected by the strange properties of that pocket dimension. On the other hand, his network suffers from obvious vulnerabilities. Agents wearing identifying insignia can be easily targeted. His reliance on Nepheli creates a single point of failure when she turns against him. His inability to directly oversee operations in the field means he must trust agents to execute missions without supervision. The intelligence analysis process reveals perhaps the greatest strength of Gideon's operation. He does not simply collect raw information. He reads voraciously, cross-referencing new intelligence against historical texts, comparing different sources, building comprehensive profiles of his targets. His study in the Round Table Hold is filled with books and scrolls, evidence of his dedication to understanding what his agents report in context. When he shares information with you about shard bearers, he does not merely tell you their location. He provides historical background, explains their relationships to other demigods, warns you of their capabilities. This analytical capability, this ability to synthesize raw intelligence into actionable knowledge, is what makes Gideon genuinely formidable, despite never leaving his study. His network also demonstrates flexibility in its targets and operations. When he learns about the Halig tree and the secret medallion required to reach it, he immediately redirects resources to acquire that information. When you present him with intelligence about hidden demigods, he rewards you and updates his operational priorities. The network adapts to new information, shifting focus as Gideon's understanding of the situation evolves. This adaptability is crucial in the chaotic environment of the lands between, where new threats and opportunities emerge constantly. Yet, for all its sophistication, the network has fundamental limitations. Gideon cannot be everywhere, cannot know everything, no matter how many agents he deploys. His title of all-knowing is aspirational, but not descriptive. He does not know the location of the Halig tree until someone tells him. He does not know about Mogwen Palace until you discover it. He remains ignorant of Ronnie's true plans, despite her proximity to the Round Table Hold. These blind spots matter tremendously, representing failures of intelligence that undermine his ambitions. The network also suffers from the fundamental problem of verification. How does Gideon know his agents are telling him the truth? How does he prevent enemy disinformation from entering his intelligence network? How does he confirm reports from agents he cannot directly observe? In the lands between, where illusions and deceptions are commonplace, where powerful sorcerers can alter perceptions and ancient curses can drive people mad, the problem of verification becomes even more acute. Gideon must somehow separate truth from lies, accurate reports from enemy propaganda, real intelligence from the delusions of agents who have been compromised or corrupted. His handling of Ensha's attack on you reveals another vulnerability in his network. When Ensha independently decides to ambush you to steal the Halig tree medallion, Gideon either did not order the attack or chooses to pretend that he did not. Either way, it represents a failure of control. If he did not order it, then his agents are acting without authorization, pursuing their own agendas contrary to his interests. If he did order it, but lies about it afterward, then he is willing to sacrifice operational security to maintain his relationship with you, prioritizing one asset over another. Both interpretations suggest weakness in his control over the network. The financial and material logistics of maintaining such a network also deserve consideration, though the game provides little direct information about this aspect. Spies require payment, equipment, safe houses, and support infrastructure. Gideon presumably funds these operations somehow, though how a tarnished in the Round Table Hold generates sufficient resources to maintain an extensive intelligence network remains unclear. Perhaps He trades information for resources, selling intelligence to the highest bidder when it serves his interests. Perhaps he has accumulated wealth over his long existence as a tarnished, or perhaps the strange economy of the Round Table Hold operates on different principles than normal commerce. The cultural context of spying in the lands between adds another layer of complexity. This is feudal society, where honor and direct confrontation are valued, where knights seek glory in open battle, where the entire social structure is built around martial prowess and noble bloodlines. In such a society, espionage carries a stigma, seen as cowardly, dishonorable, beneath the dignity of true warriors. Gideon's reliance on spies and information warfare may be tactically sound, but it marks him as someone outside the traditional power structure, someone using unconventional methods because he lacks the military might or noble status to achieve his goals through more accepted means. This outsider status may actually serve Gideon well, because people do not expect a tarnished scholar to command a sophisticated intelligence network. Because he presents himself as a studious researcher rather than a spy master, he operates beneath many people's suspicion. His enemies focus on the obvious threats, the warriors and knights and powerful sorcerers, while Gideon's agents move unnoticed through the shadows, gathering information that proves far more valuable than any individual victory in combat. The ethics of Gideon's intelligence operations deserve examination as well. He sends people into extreme danger in service of his personal ambitions. He manipulates family relationships for intelligence purposes. He likely employs torture and coercion when interrogating prisoners. He treats human beings as expendable assets, valuing them only for the information they can provide. When agents die, as they inevitably do in the dangerous lands between, Gideon shows no remorse, no mourning, no sense of responsibility for their deaths. They were tools that broke, nothing more. This callousness, this fundamental inability to value human life beyond its utility to his purposes, reveals the moral bankruptcy at the heart of his operation. Yet, from a purely operational standpoint, divorced from ethical considerations, Gideon's network represents an impressive achievement. He has built from nothing an intelligence apparatus capable of gathering information across the entire lands between. He has recruited and managed multiple agents, each pursuing their own missions. He has established protocols for reporting and verification. He has created analytical processes for making sense of the intelligence gathered. He has adapted the techniques of traditional espionage to the unique context of a shattered world where normal rules of space and time no longer fully apply. It is a remarkable accomplishment, all the more so because he achieved it while maintaining his cover as a simple scholar pursuing knowledge for its own sake. The symbolic significance of Gideon's chosen insignia, the Eye, connects to deeper themes in Elden Ring's lore. eyes are associated with knowledge throughout the game, from the eyes on Scarab shells to the eyes of grace that once guided the tarnished. The greater will itself is sometimes represented as an eye, watching over the lands between. Gideon's use of the eye symbol situates his network within this broader symbolic framework, suggesting his surveillance serves some cosmic purpose, that his pursuit of knowledge aligns with the fundamental ordering principles of reality. Whether Gideon genuinely believes this, or simply uses such symbolism for propaganda purposes, remains ambiguous. The network's information flow patterns also merit attention. Intelligence presumably moves from field agents to Gideon, who then analyzes it, synthesizes it with other information, and selectively shares it with those he deems worthy. But information also flows back out through the network. When Gideon learns something valuable, his agents presumably become aware of it as well, allowing them to adjust their operations accordingly. This bidirectional flow of intelligence is essential for network effectiveness, allowing distributed agents to coordinate their efforts even without direct communication with each other. Gideon's relationship with the two fingers adds another dimension to his intelligence operations. Through his extended communion with these enigmatic entities, he gains access to knowledge no ordinary tarnished could possess. The two fingers apparently share information about the broader metaphysical situation, about the state of the Golden Order and the greater will's intentions. This gives Gideon strategic intelligence of the highest order, understanding not just tactical situations, but the fundamental forces shaping events in the lands between. It is this deep knowledge, this understanding of cosmic significance, that ultimately breaks him when he glimpses Marika's true will. The network's ultimate failure is not tactical, but strategic. Gideon builds an effective intelligence apparatus, gathers vast amounts of information, achieves his goal of becoming genuinely knowledgeable about the lands between and its conflicts. But knowledge alone proves insufficient. Information does not translate directly into power. Understanding the situation does not automatically provide the capability to change it. Gideon knows more than almost anyone, yet he achieves nothing. He dies at your hand, his knowledge dying with him, his network dissolving, his ambitions utterly defeated despite all his careful planning and intelligence gathering. This failure illustrates a profound truth about the limitations of information. Knowledge is necessary, but not sufficient. You must also have the will to act, the capability to execute, the wisdom to know what information matters and what does not. Gideon lacks this wisdom. He pursues information for its own sake, building an ever larger archive of facts without understanding what to do with them. He knows that Radon fought Melania to a standstill in Caelid, but this knowledge does not help him defeat either of them. He learns about Mogwen Palace, but this intelligence does not grant him access to that forbidden place. He discovers the knowledge of the Halig tree, but this revelation does not make him capable of reaching it or defeating Melania who guards it. In the end, Gideon's spy network is simultaneously his greatest achievement and his greatest failure. It demonstrates his brilliance, his dedication, his ruthless determination to pursue his goals, regardless of cost. But it also reveals his fundamental limitations. His inability to understand that information alone will never make him Elden Lord. His failure to recognize that the pursuit of knowledge without wisdom is ultimately futile. The network continues operating right up until his death. Agents still in the field, intelligence still being gathered and analyzed. But all that effort, all that suffering, and all that sacrifice serves nothing when Gideon himself falls. The all-knowing proves, in the end, to know everything except the one thing that matters, that his approach was doomed from the start. Ensha of the Royal Remains. Outside Gideon's study stands a figure that embodies the strange nature of the Round Table Hold. Ensha of the Royal Remains never speaks, never moves from his position, leaning against the wall, simply observes all who pass with silent intensity. He is dressed in distinctive armor, graced with gold human bones, the remains of an ancient lord, a soulless king who was called Ensha. The armor description states plainly, it is said that the bones belong to an ancient lord, the soulless king, the lord of the lost and desperate, who was known as Ensha. This creates immediate ambiguity. Is the silent figure wearing this armor also named Ensha, or has he simply taken the armor of this ancient king? Is he the soulless king himself, somehow returned, or merely someone wearing the remains of that tragic figure? The game never provides a definitive answer, leaving players to speculate about the identity of this silent guardian. But what is clear is his relationship to Gideon Ofnir. He is described as the unspeaking adherent of Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, someone who serves the spy master with absolute dedication. Your first interaction with Ensha is peculiar. Approach him and attempt conversation, and he responds not with words, but with a gesture. He performs the "what do you want" animation, a dismissive hand motion that makes his feelings clear. You are not welcome here. Your presence is tolerated, but not desired. Like his master Gideon, Ensha maintains barriers between himself and other tarnished, refusing normal social interaction in favor of silent observation. But unlike Gideon, who at least speaks when protocol demands it, Ensha never breaks his silence. He is a watcher, a guardian, a silent presence that reminds visitors that they are being observed, that someone is always paying attention to their actions. This silence serves multiple purposes in the context of Gideon's spy network. A guardian who does not speak cannot accidentally reveal secrets. He cannot be interrogated for information, cannot be tricked into saying too much, He cannot be compromised through conversation. His silence is operational security made manifest, a literal embodiment of the principle that loose lips sink ships. By saying nothing, Ensha protects whatever knowledge he possesses, whatever role he truly plays in Gideon's organization. But Ensha's silence also creates mystery and intimidation. Visitors to the Round Table Hold notice him immediately. This armored figure watching everything, saying nothing, just standing and observing. It makes people uncomfortable, makes them wonder what he has seen, what he knows, what reports he might be providing to his master. Even though he never leaves his post, even though he apparently does nothing but watch, his presence serves as a constant reminder that Gideon has eyes on everything that happens in the Round Table Hold. The psychological impact of constant surveillance is substantial, even when that surveillance is passive. Ensha's role in the organization is complex. He is described as an adherent, suggesting devotion beyond mere employment. The term implies faith, dedication, perhaps even fanaticism. Ensha does not simply work for Gideon. He believes in Gideon's purpose, serves his master's interests with unwavering commitment. This makes him more valuable than a simple mercenary who might be bought by a higher bidder. An adherent cannot be easily turned, cannot be bribed or threatened into betraying his master, will serve unto death because his service is a form of worship. The armor he wears provides a constant low-level healing effect, slowly replenishing HP when health is reduced. This suggests Ensha is meant for endurance rather than burst damage. Built to outlast opponents through attrition, the healing property of his armor makes him difficult to whittle down, able to recover from wounds that would permanently weaken others. For someone serving as a guardian and enforcer, these properties are invaluable. He can survive extended conflicts, take damage, and recover. He can protect his position through sheer durability. The turning point in your relationship with Ensha comes after you acquire the secret Haligtree medallion. This medallion, split into 2 pieces hidden in distant locations, is the key to reaching the Haligtree, the hidden domain where Michaela supposedly slumbers. It represents information of tremendous value. Knowledge of a path to one of the most important hidden locations in the lands between. Gideon wants this information desperately. The Haligtree contains secrets about Michaela, the most fearsome of the Empyreans, according to Melania, a demigod whose location has eluded Gideon's network for years. Once you obtain the medallion, the next time you return to the Round Table Hold, you are immediately invaded. Ensha appears as a red phantom, attacking you with lethal intent. The Silent Guardian has become an assassin, attempting to kill you, and presumably steal the Haligtree medallion. This invasion comes as a shock to players who have grown accustomed to the Round Table Hold as a safe space. Suddenly, this sanctuary is compromised, and the attack comes from within, from someone who has been watching you this entire time. waiting for the moment when you possess something valuable enough to warrant killing you. The fight with Ensha reveals his combat capabilities. He wields dual clinging bone weapons, peculiar fist weapons attached to his arms. His fighting style emphasizes relentless aggression, closing distance rapidly and maintaining pressure with quick attacks. The healing property of his armor makes the fight more challenging as he recovers from damage you deal, forcing you to maintain offensive pressure or risk him outlasting you through attrition. He is a formidable opponent, far more dangerous than his passive stance outside Gideon's door would suggest. Yet, despite his strength, Ensha ultimately fails in his assassination attempt. You defeat him, his red phantom dispersing, his ambush unsuccessful. When you next speak to Gideon, he offers an explanation that rings hollow. I heard that Ensha got rather ahead of himself. This is his punishment, finished off by you, as he deserved. I haven't seen him since, naturally. My sincerest apologies. It's all his doing. I had no part in it. Ensha was always an envious sort at heart. Do forgive him, and keep up the good work. This response is calculated to absolve Gideon of responsibility, while eliminating a problematic agent. Whether Gideon truly ordered the attack, or whether Ensha acted independently, becomes impossible to determine. Both explanations are plausible. Perhaps Gideon wanted the medallion, but needed deniability, ordering Ensha to steal it while maintaining the ability to disavow the operation if it failed. Perhaps Ensha genuinely acted on his own initiative, his devotion to Gideon's cause making him willing to risk everything to acquire valuable intelligence, even without explicit orders. The aftermath reveals much about how Gideon's network operates. Ensha's defeat is permanent. He never returns to his post outside Gideon's door. The space where he stood remains empty, a reminder of his failed mission. Gideon shows no mourning for his adherent, no sense of loss for someone who presumably served him faithfully for years. Instead, he dismisses Ensha's death as deserved punishment, as natural consequences for getting ahead of himself. The casual brutality of this response reveals Gideon's fundamental view of his agents as disposable tools. When they fail, when they become liabilities, he discards them without sentiment. The Royal Remains armor set becomes available for purchase from the twin maiden husks in the Round Table Hold after Ensha's death, suggesting someone has recovered his equipment and made it available for sale. This casual commodification of a dead agent's possessions reinforces the transactional nature of relationships in the Round Table Hold. Nothing is sacred. Everything has a price, even the armor stripped from the corpse of Gideon's most devoted adherent. Ensha's story illustrates the dangers of serving in Gideon's network. He is not sent into enemy territory to die like other agents. He is not lost in some remote location. He falls right in the Round Table Hold itself, killed by another tarnished. His death, the direct result of pursuing Gideon's intelligence objectives. And for this sacrifice, for this ultimate demonstration of dedication to his master's cause, He receives no recognition, no honor, no acknowledgement beyond Gideon's cold dismissal of his failure. The psychological profile of someone like Ensha fascinates. What drives a person to such absolute devotion? What creates an adherent willing to risk everything, even to die, in service of someone else's ambitions? The armor he wears provides a possible clue. The royal remains belonged to Ensha, the soulless king, a lord of the lost and desperate. Perhaps the silent guardian wearing this armor relates to that description, seeing himself as lost and desperate, finding purpose in serving Gideon, because without that service, he would have nothing. Perhaps his devotion stems from rescue, from Gideon finding him at his lowest point and offering him purpose and direction. Or perhaps Ensha's silence conceals something more sinister. Maybe he is not truly devoted at all, merely controlled. The soulless king suggests someone without agency, without true will. Could the figure wearing the royal remains be a puppet, an empty vessel Gideon uses for his purposes? The game provides no evidence of such control, but the possibility lingers, suggested by the ominous description of the armor and the inhumane silence of its wearer. Ensha's weapon choice also reveals aspects of his operational role. The clinging bone weapons are described as belonging to the glintstone sorcerer Ensha, who killed without hesitation. Whether this refers to the ancient soulless king or the current wearer remains ambiguous, but the association with killing without hesitation is revealing. This is someone capable of violence without moral conflict, able to attack and kill as required without the hesitation that might compromise an operation. For a spy network enforcer, such ruthlessness is valuable, perhaps essential. The timing of Ensha's attack also deserves analysis. He does not attempt to steal the medallion immediately upon your acquisition. He waits until you return to the Round Table Hold, until you are in familiar territory where you expect safety. This suggests tactical thinking, choosing the moment of attack for maximum advantage. Catching you off guard in a place you consider safe increases the chances of success. It also demonstrates that Ensha, for all his silence, possesses sophisticated combat intelligence, capable of planning and executing complex operations. The failure of his assassination attempt represents more than just one agent's defeat. It reveals a fundamental vulnerability in Gideon's network. His adherent, his most trusted agent, his guardian and enforcer, proves incapable of defeating you. This failure demonstrates that Gideon's network, for all its intelligence gathering capabilities, lacks the combat power to physically seize what it cannot obtain through surveillance and infiltration. All the knowledge Gideon possesses means nothing if his agents cannot act on that intelligence effectively. Ensha's role as guardian of Gideon's study also deserves consideration. He stands outside the door, watching everyone who enters or leaves. This position allows him to monitor all of Gideon's visitors, to observe who seeks the All-Knowing's counsel, to note how often people visit and for how long. It is a prime position for gathering intelligence about other inhabitants of the Round Table Hold, for identifying potential threats or opportunities. In this role, Ensha serves as both guardian and surveillance asset, protecting Gideon while simultaneously gathering information about everyone in the hold. The symbolic significance of Ensha's silence connects to broader themes of communication and knowledge in Elden Ring. In a game where much information is delivered through item descriptions and environmental storytelling, where dialogue is often cryptic or incomplete, Ensha represents the ultimate extreme of withheld communication. He says nothing, reveals nothing through speech, forces you to interpret his meaning through gesture and action alone. This mirrors the player's own experience navigating the lands between, piecing together meaning from fragments and implications rather than explicit explanation. After Ensha's death, Gideon continues operating his network as if nothing significant happened. He still gathers intelligence, still sends you on missions, still trades information for progress reports. The loss of his adherent causes no visible disruption to his operations. This resilience suggests either that Ensha was not as crucial to the network as his prominent position suggested, or that Gideon has sufficient redundancy built into his organization that losing any single agent, even his most devoted adherent, does not cripple his capabilities. Yet there must be some impact. Gideon no longer has his guardian watching the door, no longer has his enforcer available for operations requiring violence. When he later confronts you before the Erd Tree, he fights alone, without backup, without support from any remaining agents. Perhaps Ensha's death eliminated Gideon's combat capability, leaving him with intelligence assets, but no enforcement capability. Perhaps all his other agents were already dead or deployed, leaving him with no choice but to face you personally. Or perhaps Gideon, in his pride, believes his magical knowledge makes him your equal in combat, that he needs no support to defeat you. The legend of the original Ensha, the Soulless King, adds mythological depth to the Silent Guardian's story. A lord of the lost and desperate suggests someone who ruled over the dispossessed, who commanded the loyalty of those who had nothing left to lose. This description fits perfectly with the kind of people who might serve in Gideon's spy network. His agents are likely desperate individuals, people who feel they have no other options, who cling to any opportunity for purpose and advancement. They are the lost souls, seeking direction in the chaos of the lands between, willing to risk everything because they have nothing to lose. Ensha's assassination attempt also demonstrates the inherent conflict between different agents pursuing the same objective. You and Ensha both serve Gideon's ultimate goal of gathering information and defeating shard bearers. Yet when you obtain something Gideon wants, Ensha tries to kill you to take it. This reveals the competitive nature of intelligence work, where assets can become threats, where the pursuit of information creates conflict even between people normally working toward the same goal. It shows how Gideon's network, lacking strong hierarchical control, allows for freelancing that can undermine the organization's overall effectiveness. The Royal Remains armor set as equipment in the game provides additional lore. The helmet description notes that no surface of the helm's interior touches the head of the wearer, as though it were worn by a man without form. This suggests the armor has unusual properties, that it can be worn by someone without normal physical substance. Whether this applies to Ensha specifically, or simply describes the armor's strange nature, remains unclear, but it adds the unsettling quality of the Silent Guardian, the sense that he might not be entirely human. Ensha's defeat marks a turning point in your relationship with Gideon. Before this incident, you were a valuable asset providing intelligence. After Ensha's attack, an undercurrent of tension exists between you and the All-Knowing. He continues cooperating, continues sharing information, but the trust is broken. Both of you now know that this alliance is temporary, contingent on mutual benefit. When that benefit ends, when your goals diverge from his, violence becomes inevitable. Ensha's attack foreshadows Gideon's own eventual betrayal, showing you that the All-Knowing will use force when his intelligence operations fail to achieve his objectives. The manner of Ensha's death also matters. He died in the Round Table Hold, defeated in invasion, his red phantom dispersing when you strike the killing blow. This phantom death might suggest he could return, that he is not truly destroyed. Yet, he never reappears, never retakes his post, never makes another attempt. The death is permanent, final, and absolute. Whether this represents true death or merely banishment from the Round Table Hold remains ambiguous, but the practical effect is the same. Ensha is gone, removed from Gideon's network, his position outside the study forever vacant. In the broader context of Gideon's spy network, Ensha represents the inner circle, the most trusted assets who work directly with the spy master rather than operating in distant territories. His death reveals that even those close associates are expendable, that Gideon will sacrifice anyone when they cease to be useful. It demonstrates the hollow nature of the loyalty demanded by the All-Knowing, who expects absolute devotion from his adherents, but offers nothing in return except cold pragmatism. Ensha's silence, maintained even unto death, protects whatever secrets he carried. We never learn what he knew, what operations he participated in, what information he gathered during his time watching the Round Table Hold. His knowledge dies with him, lost to Gideon's network forever. This represents a critical failure in intelligence operations, the loss of institutional knowledge that occurs when agents die without properly debriefing or documenting what they have learned. Gideon's failure to extract and preserve Ensha's accumulated intelligence shows another weakness in his methodology, too dependent on individual agents rather than systematic documentation. The empty space where Ensha stood becomes a memorial of sorts, though not an intentional one. Players returning to the Round Table Hold after his death Notice the absence. Remember the silent figure who once watched that spot. Recognize that something has changed in the hold's dynamic. The vacant post serves as a reminder that actions have consequences, that the spy games Gideon plays result in real casualties, that the pursuit of information leaves bodies in its wake. The fallen spy in Rykard's arena. Deep within the volcano manor, in the sacrificial chamber where Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy, dwells within the God-Devouring Serpent, you find evidence of Gideon's network reaching into the heart of enemy territory. Among the treasures scattered around Rykard's arena, you discover a corpse wearing distinctive armor. The eye surcoat, bearing Gideon's insignia, marks this dead agent as one of the all-knowing spies. Here, in perhaps the most hostile location imaginable for someone affiliated with the Round Table Hold, one of Gideon's operatives met their end. The presence of this corpse raises immediate questions. How did a spy wearing Gideon's insignia penetrate so deeply into the volcano manor? What was their mission? How did they reach Rykard's sanctum, when even most members of the manor's recusants never venture into that blasphemous chamber? And most importantly, what intelligence did they gather before they died? And did that information ever make it back to Gideon? Understanding this requires examining the nature of the volcano manor itself. This is not simply another hostile location in the lands between. The manor serves as headquarters for the recusants, tarnished who have abandoned the path of becoming Elden Lord in favor of serving Lady Tanith and her husband Rykard. These are people who have rejected the Golden Order, who embrace blasphemy and heresy, who dedicate themselves to Rykard's vision of the God-Devouring Serpent consuming all things. They are, in many ways, the antithesis of everything the Round Table Hold supposedly represents. The recusants actively hunt other tarnished, sending their champions into the lands between to assassinate specific targets. They operate as a kind of anti-Round Table Hold, an alternative organization for ambitious tarnished who have become disillusioned with the traditional path. Infiltrating such an organization requires extraordinary skill, complete commitment to the cover identity, and the ability to maintain deception even among people who specialize in treachery and betrayal. Yet Gideon's spy apparently accomplished exactly this, gaining access to the manor and remaining there long enough to explore its depths. The corpse's location in Rykard's arena suggests several possible scenarios. Perhaps the spy was a member of the recusants, having infiltrated the organization successfully, earning sufficient trust to be granted access to the Lord of Blasphemy himself. Perhaps they were discovered as an infiltrator and dragged before Rykard to be judged and executed. Perhaps they ventured into the arena of their own initiative, seeking to gather intelligence about Rykard directly, only to be discovered and killed. Or perhaps they were killed elsewhere, and their body was thrown into the arena afterward, disposal by serpent being a favored method for dealing with enemies in the volcano manor. The community has speculated about the identity of this dead spy, with some believing it to be recusant Henricus. Henricus is mentioned in item descriptions as one of the recusants who served the volcano manor, though you never encounter him alive in the game. The Viridian Amber Medallion 2 description states, "The recusant Henricus searched for this medallion his entire life. Indeed, it is said that he was caught and killed in the attempt." This description matches the fate of Gideon's spy perfectly. Someone who infiltrated the manor, who searched for something specific, who was ultimately caught and killed. If the spy was indeed Henricus, it suggests he was a deep cover agent, someone who spent significant time embedded within the recusants, building trust, gaining access to progressively more sensitive areas and information. His search for the Viridian Amber Medallion might have been part of his cover, a plausible reason for exploring the manor's depths that would not immediately reveal his true purpose. But he was caught in the attempt, discovered as an infiltrator, and killed for his betrayal. The nature of deep cover operations makes agents vulnerable in ways that other intelligence work does not. When you infiltrate an organization, you must perform the role convincingly, participating in their activities, demonstrating loyalty to their cause. For Henricus, or whoever the spy was, this meant participating in the recusants' hunts, killing other tarnished on orders from Lady Tanith, committing acts that might genuinely make them complicit in the manor's blasphemous activities. The moral compromise required for such work is substantial, and the constant risk of discovery creates tremendous psychological pressure. The discovery of the spy would have been catastrophic for Gideon's intelligence operations. The Volcano Manor leadership would have interrogated the infiltrator, extracting information about who sent them, what they were looking for, what intelligence they had already gathered and reported. This counterintelligence breakthrough would have revealed to Rykard and Tanith that the Brown Table Hold was actively running operations against them, that Gideon was gathering intelligence about the God-Devouring Serpent. It would have made them more cautious, more suspicious of new recruits, more vigilant about security. It would have compromised any other agents Gideon might have had in the manor, forcing them to either flee or risk exposure. The spy's death also reveals the limits of Gideon's network. Even his most skilled agents can be caught, can be killed, and can fail in their missions. The Volcano Manor proved too difficult to penetrate successfully, its security too tight, its members too paranoid for even a skilled infiltrator to operate safely. This failure to gather intelligence on Rykard is evident in Gideon's limited knowledge about the Lord of Blasphemy. He can tell you Rykard's location and warn you of his power, but he seems to know little about the specifics of the God-Devouring Serpent or the true extent of Rykard's transformation. The items you can loot from the corpse in Rykard's arena provide additional clues. Beyond the eye surcoat that identifies the body as Gideon's agent, you find various treasures that suggest the spy had been systematically exploring the manor, collecting items and presumably documenting what they found. The presence of valuable items on the corpse raises questions about whether they ever successfully transmitted any intelligence back to Gideon, or whether all their gathered information died with them. The counterintelligence implications extend beyond just this one operation. If the recusants discovered one spy from the Round Table hold, they would logically suspect there might be others. They would increase their vetting procedures, watch their members more closely, create tests of loyalty to identify potential infiltrators. This would make any subsequent intelligence operations against the Volcano Manor exponentially more difficult, essentially closing off that source of information to Gideon's network. The spy's fate also serves as a warning to other agents in Gideon's network. Wear the eye surcoat into enemy territory, and you might end up dead in some forsaken place, your body left to rot, your sacrifice unmarked and unremembered. The risk of serving as Gideon's operative is not abstract or theoretical. People die doing this work, die far from home in hostile territories, die serving someone else's ambitions. The corpse in Rykard's arena makes this risk concrete, provides physical evidence of the price some agents pay. From an operational security perspective, having agents wear identifying insignias into hostile territory represents a puzzling choice. The eye surcoat immediately marks the wearer as affiliated with Gideon, makes infiltration nearly impossible, turns every mission into a known operation where enemies can immediately identify your allegiance. Yet Gideon's agents apparently wear this insignia even on deep cover missions. Perhaps they are required to wear it, a condition of receiving Gideon's support and resources. Perhaps the armor provides some benefit that makes the security risk worthwhile. Or perhaps agents have the option to wear it or not, and this particular spy made the fatal choice to keep wearing it even in enemy territory. The theological implications of the spy's death in Rykard's arena add another layer of horror. Rykard feeds himself and the God-Devouring Serpent with bodies of defeated enemies, consuming them to fuel his blasphemous growth. The spy's corpse lying in the arena suggests it has not yet been consumed, either because Rykard has not noticed it among the other debris, or because he has already taken what he wanted and left the remains. Either way, the spy's body may have been partially devoured by the serpent, literally consumed by the very subject they were trying to gather intelligence about. It is a grotesque end, appropriate to the horror of the Volcano Manor. The timing of the spy's mission remains unclear. Did this infiltration occur before the shattering, during the early days of the conflict, or more recently? The state of the corpse provides few clues, as death seems to work differently in the lands between, with bodies persisting far longer than natural decay would allow. The operation could have been underway for years, with the spy slowly building trust and access. Or it might have been a more recent, desperate attempt to gather intelligence on a shard bearer who had proven particularly difficult to understand. The strategic value of intelligence about Rykard is substantial enough to justify a risky infiltration. As a shard bearer controlling a great rune, Rykard represents a major obstacle to anyone seeking to become Elden Lord. Understanding his capabilities, knowing the true nature of the God-Devouring Serpent, learning the layout of the Volcano Manor and its defenses, identifying potential weaknesses in Rykard's position. All of this intelligence would be invaluable for planning how to claim his great rune. Gideon had strong motivation to run this operation, despite the obvious risks. The relationship between the Volcano Manor and the Round Table Hold adds context to this espionage. These are rival organizations competing for the loyalty of ambitious Tarnished. Each offers a path forward, a purpose, a community of fellow Tarnished working toward shared goals. The manor presents itself as the alternative to the Hold, a place where those who reject the Greater Will's designs can find fellowship. This rivalry makes infiltrating the manor both more valuable and more dangerous. The recusants would be especially watchful for spies from the Round Table Hold, knowing their enemies have strong motivation to gather intelligence on their operations. The fate of the intelligence the spy gathered represents perhaps the greatest tragedy of the operation. If they discovered valuable information about Rykard, about the God-Devouring Serpent, about the manor's operations or the recusants' plans, and that information died with them, then the entire mission was wasted. All the risk, all the moral compromise required to maintain their cover, all the time invested in the infiltration, all of it meaningless if the intelligence never reached Gideon. This is the nightmare scenario for any spy network. The loss of critical information because an agent was killed before they could report. However, it is possible the spy successfully transmitted some intelligence before being discovered. They might have established a communication method, leaving dead drops or using messengers to send reports back to the Round Table Hold. The information Gideon does possess about Rykard, limited as it is, had to come from somewhere. Perhaps this spy provided at least some of that intelligence before their cover was blown. Perhaps their sacrifice was not entirely in vain, even though they paid the ultimate price. The corpse also serves as environmental storytelling, a piece of the world that rewards exploration and observation. Players who thoroughly investigate Rykard's arena and notice the Sir code immediately recognize its significance. Here is proof that Gideon's network extends even into the most blasphemous locations, that his agents infiltrate enemy organizations, that people die pursuing his intelligence objectives. It is a small detail that opens up vast implications about the scope and activities of the spy network. The discovery of the spy's corpse by the player character represents the final chapter in their story. Whatever they learned, whatever they experienced during their time in the Volcano Manor, whatever hopes or fears drove them to accept this dangerous mission. All of it ends here, in a pool of magma-heated stone, their body left among the treasures and debris of Rykard's lair. It is an inglorious end for someone who presumably showed considerable courage and skill. A reminder that in the world of espionage, even the most capable agents can fail, can be discovered, and can die far from home, serving someone else's ambitions. Nepheli Loux, the unwitting asset. Among all the agents in Gideon's network, none better illustrates his manipulative methodology than Nepheli Loux, the warrior woman he claims as his adopted daughter. Her story reveals how Gideon recruits assets, how he uses personal relationships for intelligence purposes, and how he disposes of agents who cease to serve his needs. It is a tragic tale of trust betrayed, of innocence exploited, of family bonds corrupted by ambition. You first encounter Nepheli in Stormvale Castle, where she has come to hunt Godric the Grafted. She is a capable warrior, wielding twin axes with practiced skill, her combat style favoring aggressive assault. Her Storm Stomp Ash of War sends enemies flying, demonstrating considerable physical power. She offers to help you face Godric, fighting alongside you if you summon her for the battle. She is friendly, straightforward, seemingly driven by the simple goal of defeating a shard bearer and proving her worth as a tarnished. After Godric's defeat, Nepheli returns to the Round Table Hold, where you learn of her relationship to Gideon. She speaks of him with affection and respect, calling him father, expressing gratitude for his guidance and support. She believes he adopted her out of kindness, that he saw potential in her and chose to nurture it, that their relationship is genuine familial bond. This belief makes what follows all the more heartbreaking. The truth about Nepheli's adoption is revealed through the description of her Stormhawk axe, weapon of Nepheli Loux the warrior. A hawk is her teacher, and the gusts of storms are her battlefield companions, given to her by her adoptive father, Gideon Ofnir, and embroidered with the legend, to fell the monstrous in pursuit of the throne. This gift seems thoughtful, personal, chosen specifically for Nepheli's fighting style and aspirations. But the inscription reveals Gideon's true purpose in the adoption, to create an asset for pursuing the throne, someone who will defeat monstrous shard bearers in his service. Further evidence comes from another item description, one that chillingly exposes Gideon's methodology. The Stormhawk axe description states, Gideon gained Nepheli's favor through the graces of his legendary wisdom, and this axe, hewn from the remains of a Stormvale hawk, is proof of that bond. It is made even more explicit in her armor description, which notes that Gideon took advantage of her youthful credulity. This is not interpretation or speculation. The game directly states that Gideon manipulated a young, naive person, exploiting her trust and need for family to turn her into an asset for his network. Consider what this means. Nepheli was presumably alone, without family, vulnerable in the dangerous lands between. Gideon found her, offered her support and guidance, created the illusion of familial love, all for the strategic purpose of gaining a powerful combat asset. He did not adopt her because he cared about her welfare. He adopted her because she was useful, because her combat abilities made her valuable for operations requiring direct confrontation with powerful enemies. The entire relationship was transactional from the beginning, though Nepheli did not know it. This methodology reveals sophisticated understanding of human psychology. Young people who lack family desperately want to belong, want to be valued, want guidance and support. By positioning himself as a father figure, Gideon created intense loyalty that mere employment could never achieve. Nepheli would go anywhere, face any danger, because she believed she was making her father proud. She would report everything she learned, because sharing with family feels natural, not like operational debriefing. She became the perfect intelligence asset, motivated by love that Gideon never genuinely reciprocated. The operations Gideon sends Nepheli on serve his intelligence needs perfectly. Hunting Godric in Stormvale Castle allows her to gather intelligence about the castle's defenses, Godric's capabilities, the layout of his domain. Her presence there when you arrive suggests she had been operating in the area for some time, observing, learning, preparing. When you encounter her, she has already mapped out much of the castle, knows which paths are safer, understands the basic threats. This reconnaissance is exactly what a good intelligence operative should accomplish before engaging the primary target. Her willingness to fight alongside you against Godric demonstrates another valuable trait. She is capable of functioning as part of a team, able to coordinate with other Tarnished when necessary. This flexibility makes her more valuable than a pure solo operative. Gideon can deploy her for individual missions or as part of larger operations, adapting her employment to whatever the situation requires. Her friendly demeanor and apparent trustworthiness also make her useful for establishing first contact with potentially valuable assets like yourself, building relationships that Gideon can later exploit. After Godric's defeat, Gideon's interest in Nepheli's capabilities becomes more apparent. He praises her success, encourages her to continue hunting shard-bearers, reinforces the behavior he wants by providing approval. The dynamic is classic operant conditioning, shaping her actions through positive reinforcement. Success brings fatherly pride, which motivates further success, creating a cycle that keeps Nepheli operating as Gideon desires. It is manipulative, calculating, exploitative, and entirely characteristic of how Gideon treats his agents. The turning point comes when you give Nepheli the Stormhawk King, an item you find in the Chapel of Anticipation where your journey began. This ash appears as the spirit of a great Stormhawk, and Nepheli reacts to it with deep emotion. She reveals that the hawk was her teacher, that the Stormhawk ashes in her possession are those of her tutelary beast, her teacher and companion. The Stormhawk King connects to her past, to her identity before Gideon, to a life she had before becoming his adopted daughter and intelligence asset. Following this reunion with her past, Gideon sends Nepheli on a mission to the village of the Albinaurics in Liurnia. This village sits at the bottom of a cliffside, home to the silver-skinned Albinauric people, artificial beings who suffer various physical ailments. Albus, one of the Albinaurics hiding in a pot, carries half the secret Halig Tree medallion, a piece of information that Gideon desperately wants. The mission parameters are simple. Go to the village, gather intelligence, and report back. What happens in the village destroys Nepheli's innocence and her relationship with Gideon. She witnesses or learns of a massacre, Albinaurics slaughtered en masse. The specific details of what occurred remain somewhat ambiguous, but the emotional impact on Nepheli is severe. When you next encounter her in the Round Table Hold, she is devastated, sitting in a room downstairs, barely able to speak. She tells you of the atrocities she witnessed, questions how anyone could commit such acts, struggles to reconcile what she saw with her understanding of right and wrong. The community has extensively debated who actually perpetrated the Albinauric massacre. Some believe Gideon ordered it directly, sending other agents to eliminate the village and secure the medallion. Others suggest Omen Killer Rollo, who can be found in the village and who has clear motivation to kill Albinaurics given his profession. Still, others believe Nepheli's reaction comes not from witnessing the massacre itself, but from discovering that Gideon either ordered it or could have prevented it and chose not to. Regardless of the specific mechanism, Nepheli clearly associates the massacre with Gideon. Her faith in him is shattered. She can no longer trust the man she called father, can no longer serve his purposes without question. This represents catastrophic failure of an intelligence asset. An agent who cannot trust their handler becomes worse than useless, becomes potentially dangerous, as they might leak information or actively work against their former organization. Gideon's response to this failure is characteristically cold. When you speak to Gideon about Nepheli's crisis, he dismisses her emotional response with contempt. He states that she merely behaves as a woman who knows nothing of the world, suggesting her reaction is weakness born of naivety rather than legitimate moral concern. He tells you she is no longer his daughter, that he has disowned her, that she is worthless to him now. The casual brutality of this rejection reveals everything about Gideon's true feelings toward Nepheli. She was never his daughter. She was an asset, and when that asset became compromised, he discarded her without hesitation or remorse. The description of her armor becomes even more chilling in this context. Gideon took advantage of her youthful credulity. He knew exactly what he was doing from the beginning. The entire adoption was manipulation, a calculated operation to recruit a valuable combat asset by exploiting her psychological vulnerabilities. Years of building trust, of pretending to care, of playing the role of a loving father. All of it was a performance, intelligence tradecraft, a means to an end. And when that end was no longer achievable, when Nepheli's crisis of conscience made her unreliable, he ended the performance and discarded her. Nepheli's fate after her disownment varies depending on player action. If you give her the Stormhawk King ashes before the massacre, and if certain other conditions are met, including Kenneth Haight's questline progression, Nepheli can eventually become the Lord of Stormvale Castle, claiming lordship over Limgrave, finding purpose and position despite Gideon's rejection. This redemptive arc suggests Nepheli possesses genuine strength of character, that she can build a life beyond serving as Gideon's asset, that she is more than the weapon he tried to forge her into. But many players never complete these specific steps, and for them, Nepheli remains broken in the Round Table hold, sitting in that downstairs room, her spirit crushed, her purpose destroyed. She speaks of giving up her axes, of abandoning the warrior's path, of no longer knowing what she should do or who she should be. This permanent psychological damage represents the true cost of Gideon's manipulation. He did not just lose an asset, he destroyed a person, broke someone's spirit through betrayal and exploitation, left lasting scars that may never fully heal. The parallels between Nepheli's story and traditional intelligence operations are striking. Real-world intelligence agencies have long histories of recruiting assets by exploiting personal vulnerabilities, by offering familial connection to those who lack it, by creating emotional bonds that make the asset dependent on their handler. The techniques Gideon employs are recognizable to anyone familiar with espionage, adapted to the fantasy setting of the Lands Between, but fundamentally similar to methods used in reality. Nepheli's story is ultimately tragedy. She deserved better than to be used and discarded. She deserved a genuine family, authentic relationships, guidance from someone who truly cared about her welfare rather than her utility. Instead, she got Gideon Ofnir, a man incapable of valuing people beyond what they can provide to his ambitions. Her suffering is unnecessary, preventable, the direct result of Gideon's moral bankruptcy. And she is not unique. She is simply the most visible victim of a system that treats human beings as intelligence assets, as sources of information, as tools to be used and discarded in the endless pursuit of knowledge and power. Dolores and the Seluvis connection. Among the more mysterious aspects of Gideon's network is his past relationship with Dolores the Sleeping Arrow, and through her, his connection to Preceptor Seluvis. This relationship reveals historical layers to Gideon's intelligence operations, showing how old alliances fractured and former friends became enemies. It also hints at darker aspects of intelligence work in the Lands Between, where arcane powers can turn living beings into puppets, where trust becomes a weapon, where even death does not necessarily end someone's usefulness. Dolores is encountered in puppet form, available for summoning if you purchase her ashes from Seluvis. The description of her spirit ashes provides crucial information. Spirit of Dolores, once a skilled archer who slumbered peacefully in the lands between. It is said Preceptor Seluvis was once a compatriot of Sir Gideon the All-Knowing, and this puppet was entrusted to him during their time together. This brief passage contains multiple significant revelations about Gideon's past and the nature of his relationships. First, it establishes that Gideon and Seluvis were compatriots, colleagues or allies who worked together at some point in the past. This suggests Gideon's intelligence network once included or was allied with powerful sorcerers, capable of creating spirit puppets. Seluvis is a member of the Carrion royal family service, connected to Ronnie's circle, possessing forbidden knowledge about puppetry magic. His alliance with Gideon implies the All-Knowing once had access to considerable magical resources and connections to Carrion sorcery. Second, it reveals that Dolores was entrusted to Seluvis during their partnership. This phrasing is ambiguous. Was Dolores a living person who Gideon entrusted to Seluvis's care? Was she already a puppet when this transfer occurred? Did Gideon give Seluvis permission to turn her into a puppet? Or did Seluvis transform her independently, perhaps even against her will? The game provides no definitive answers, leaving players to interpret based on limited information. The most disturbing interpretation, however, is that Dolores was a living agent in Gideon's network, whom Seluvis transformed into a puppet, either with or without Gideon's consent. This would represent the ultimate exploitation of an intelligence asset, turning a living person into a controllable puppet who cannot refuse orders, cannot betray secrets, cannot develop moral qualms or personal loyalties that might compromise operations. From a purely operational standpoint, puppet agents would be ideal, completely reliable, and utterly obedient. But the ethical implications are horrific, reducing human beings to remote-controlled tools. An alternative interpretation is that Dolores was already dead when she came into Seluvis's possession, and he created a spirit puppet from her remains, a common practice in the lands between. In this reading, Gideon might have provided Seluvis with the remains of a deceased agent, allowing the preceptor to preserve her capabilities in puppet form. This is still exploitative, using someone's remains without consent, but less actively malicious than transforming a living person into a puppet. The description of Dolores as the sleeping arrow suggests her specialty was archery from concealed positions, taking shots from hiding, eliminating targets without exposing herself to risk. This skill would be valuable for intelligence operations, requiring elimination of specific targets, for providing overwatch during other operations, for surveillance from distance. An archer can observe without being observed, can strike without warning, can maintain position far from the target. Dolores would have been a valuable asset for any intelligence network. Her peaceful slumber mentioned in the description suggests she is not tormented or suffering in her puppet state, that Seluvis's magic maintains her in a state of rest. Whether this should be considered mercy or simply efficient resource management remains ambiguous. A puppet that experiences awareness and suffering might be less reliable than one that simply executes programmed behaviors while sleeping through its servitude. The relationship between Gideon and Seluvis deteriorated at some point, transforming from alliance to enmity. When you bring Seluvis's introduction letter to Gideon, he responds with obvious hostility, calling Seluvis a sick, twisted individual and warning you to stay away from him. This vehemence suggests deep personal animosity, not merely strategic disagreement. Something happened between these two former compatriots that turned them into enemies. Something serious enough that Gideon now actively warns people against associating with Seluvis. The nature of their split remains mysterious, though several possibilities suggest themselves. Perhaps Gideon discovered Seluvis was transforming living people into puppets, and found this unethical, though Gideon's own treatment of Nepheli makes moral objections seem unlikely. Perhaps Seluvis attempted to transform someone important to Gideon into a puppet, or threatened to do so. Perhaps they simply competed for the same resources or influence, each seeing the other as an obstacle to their ambitions. The puppetry magic itself provides insight into another dimension of intelligence operations in the lands between. If agents can be turned into puppets, then no one is truly safe. No loyalty is absolutely reliable. The threat of puppetry would hang over any intelligence network, creating paranoia and distrust. Handlers would need to constantly verify that their agents were still autonomous beings, rather than puppets controlled by enemy intelligence services. The counterintelligence implications are staggering. Seluvis's own network of puppets represents a dark mirror to Gideon's network of living agents, where Gideon recruits and manipulates people while they remain autonomous. Seluvis transforms beings into complete slaves, robbing them of all agency. Both networks rely on controlling others, but Seluvis's methods are more direct and absolute. This similarity between the two former compatriots may explain their split. Perhaps they recognize in each other their own worst aspects, each seeing the logical extreme of their own methods reflected in the other's practices. The fate of other potential puppets in Seluvis's collection provides additional context. If you complete Seluvis's quest line, he reveals his ambition to transform major figures into puppets, including potentially even finger maidens or Rani herself. This grandiose scheme demonstrates both Seluvis's power and his megalomania. He believes he can reduce anyone, even demigods and divine servants, to puppet status. Such ambitions would certainly alarm former allies like Gideon, who would recognize the threat such capabilities pose. The acquisition of Dolores's puppet ashes requires purchasing them from Seluvis, suggesting he retained possession of her after his split with Gideon. That Gideon allowed Seluvis to keep this puppet rather than demanding its return suggests either that Gideon lacked leverage to enforce such demands, or that he had moved beyond caring about Dolores's fate. Neither interpretation reflects well on the all-knowing. Either he was too weak to protect his former agent's remains from exploitation, or he was too callous to try. The broader implication is that Gideon's network has historical depth, that it existed and operated long before you arrived in the lands between. Dolores and Seluvis represent earlier iterations of the network, previous alliances and operations that predate the current configuration. This suggests Gideon has been building his intelligence apparatus for years, possibly decades, gradually expanding his reach and refining his methods. The network you encounter is the result of long evolution, lessons learned from previous successes and failures. The use of magic for intelligence purposes adds another layer of understanding how Gideon's network operates. Sorcery in the lands between can accomplish things impossible through mundane means: scrying to observe distant locations, illusions to deceive enemies, mental manipulation to extract information or control behavior. A network that incorporates powerful sorcerers like Seluvis would have access to capabilities far beyond what ordinary spies could provide. Losing this magical support when he and Seluvis split would have significantly degraded Gideon's operational capabilities. This might explain why Gideon seems to rely more heavily on personal relationships and traditional human intelligence methods in the present. Without magical support, he must depend on manipulating people like Nepheli, on recruiting agents willing to wear his insignia into hostile territory, on trading information and building networks through human relationships. He has adapted his methodology to work within the constraints created by losing his alliance with Seluvis and the magical resources that alliance provided. The ethical questions surrounding Dolores extend beyond just her specific case. If Gideon and Seluvis were compatriots, if they worked together on intelligence operations, how many other agents might have been transformed into puppets during their partnership? How many living people did Seluvis experiment on with Gideon's knowledge or tacit approval? What other crimes against human dignity did they commit in pursuit of intelligence and control? The puppet you can purchase may represent just one visible example of a much larger pattern of exploitation and abuse. Dolores' continued existence as a puppet, available for summoning by anyone who purchases her ashes, creates a kind of immortality through slavery. She cannot truly die, cannot rest, and continues to serve whoever possesses her puppet ashes. This commodification of her being, turned into an item that can be bought and sold, represents perhaps the ultimate degradation. She has been reduced to property, her skills and abilities available for use by anyone with enough runes to purchase her from Seluvis. It is exploitation that extends beyond death, that makes death itself irrelevant to her value as an asset. Her skills as an archer make the puppetry particularly valuable from an operational standpoint. Archery requires tremendous skill, muscle memory developed through years of practice, understanding of trajectory and timing and wind. These capabilities persist in puppet form, allowing Seluvis and now anyone who summons her to access expert marksmanship without investing the time to develop those skills personally. She represents stolen expertise, abilities cultivated through a lifetime of training, now available for exploitation by anyone who purchases her remains. The relationship between puppetry and intelligence work extends beyond just Gideon and Seluvis. Throughout the lands between, various factions employ methods of control that reduce agency. The formless mother's blood curse that can compel behavior, the influence of outer gods that override individual will, the manipulation of minds through sorcery. Intelligence operations in this world must account for these magical means of control and exploitation, must protect against them, while potentially employing them against enemies. The line between intelligence gathering and dark sorcery becomes blurred when magic can extract information directly from minds or transform living beings into controllable puppets. Gideon's warning about Seluvis takes on additional significance in this context. He is not simply telling you to avoid an unsavory individual. He is warning you about someone who could potentially transform you into a puppet, someone who has the magical capability to rob you of autonomy entirely. The warning is both personal, reflecting his animosity towards his former compatriot, and professional, reflecting legitimate counterintelligence concerns about Seluvis's capabilities and intentions. Gideon knows firsthand what Seluvis is capable of, having witnessed or participated in the transformation of Dolores and possibly others. The dissolution of their partnership likely weakened both individuals. Gideon lost access to puppetry magic and the magical capabilities Seluvis provided. Seluvis lost access to Gideon's intelligence network and information resources. Each became more vulnerable because of the split, less capable of achieving their goals alone than they would have been working together. This mutual weakening may have been inevitable given the nature of their respective ambitions and methods, but it demonstrates how personal conflicts can undermine intelligence operations, even when cooperation would serve both parties better. The historical pattern of alliances forming and dissolving around Gideon reveals the instability inherent in intelligence networks built on exploitation and manipulation. When relationships are transactional rather than authentic, when allies are valued only for their utility, those alliances inevitably fracture when circumstances change or when one party no longer serves the other's needs. Gideon and Seluvis split because their partnership was never based on genuine friendship or shared values, only mutually beneficial cooperation that ended when their interests diverged. This pattern reappears throughout Gideon's network. Nepheli's disownment, Ensha's dismissal after death, the unnamed spies dead in hostile territory, the fractured alliance with Seluvis. Gideon builds relationships on exploitation, and those relationships inevitably collapse, usually catastrophically for the other party. He seems incapable of learning from these failures, incapable of recognizing that his methodology creates enemies and eliminates allies, weakening his position rather than strengthening it. The lingering question about Dolores is whether she was consented to any part of her fate. Did she volunteer to become a puppet, seeing it as a means of continuing to serve even after death? Did she agree to work with Seluvis, trusting that Gideon's compatriot would treat her ethically? Or was she victimized, transformed without consent, reduced to puppet status against her will? The game provides no answer, but the pattern of exploitation throughout Gideon's network suggests the darkest interpretation is likely correct. Dolores was probably just another asset to be used, someone whose autonomy mattered less than her utility to intelligence operations. The purchase price of Dolores' puppet ashes from Seluvis is relatively modest, suggesting she is not considered particularly valuable compared to other puppets in his collection. This commodification, this assignment of market value to what was once a living person, represents another layer of degradation. She has been reduced to a commercial transaction, her worth measured in runes rather than human dignity. That players can casually purchase her remains and deploy her in combat without ever knowing her story or respecting her autonomy mirrors the casual exploitation that characterized her treatment by Gideon and Seluvis. Dolores, the Sleeping Arrow, represents the past of Gideon's network, the dark history that predates your arrival in the lands between. She embodies the exploitative methodology that continues in the present through agents like Nepheli and Ensha. She demonstrates how alliances between intelligence operators can fracture, leaving victims caught in the middle. And she reveals that Gideon's network once had access to magical capabilities it no longer possesses, suggesting decline rather than growth, weakening rather than strengthening. She is a warning about what becomes of those who serve in intelligence networks built on exploitation, a glimpse of the fate that awaits agents who outlive their usefulness or fall victim to the very powers they sought to employ. The Scarab Theory and Supernatural Surveillance. Among the community theories attempting to explain the full scope of Gideon's intelligence gathering capabilities, few are as intriguing or controversial as the Scarab hypothesis. Throughout the lands between, you encounter numerous scarab beetles, peculiar creatures that drop valuable items when killed. Many of these beetles bear distinctive markings on their shells, including eye-like patterns that bear unsettling resemblance to Gideon's chosen insignia. This has led some players to theorize that these creatures serve as Gideon's remote surveillance devices, allowing him to observe distant locations without deploying human agents. The teardrop scarabs specifically draw attention because they drop sacred tears, valuable items that upgrade healing flask potency. Their shells display prominent eye markings, and they appear in locations throughout the lands between, often near important sites or along major travel routes. The distribution pattern suggests deliberate placement rather than random natural occurrence. If these scarabs function as observation posts, they would provide Gideon with an information network far more extensive than human agents alone could achieve. The theory gains circumstantial support from various observations. Gideon's title emphasizes his role as observer. His armor, decorated with eyes and ears, suggesting surveillance as central to his identity and methods. Scarabs appear near sites of grace, at important locations, along paths traveled by tarnished, seeking great runes. They are difficult to catch, scurrying away when approached, as if their primary purpose is observation rather than confrontation. Their presence in diverse and dangerous locations, from mountaintops to underground rivers, suggests either supernatural hardiness or magical nature rather than ordinary biological creatures. However, the game provides no direct confirmation of this theory. No item description explicitly states that Gideon uses scarabs for surveillance. No dialogue mentions such a practice. No environmental storytelling clearly demonstrates this connection. The theory rests entirely on circumstantial evidence, the eye markings, the distribution patterns, the symbolic connection to Gideon's surveillance themes, and the difficulty of explaining his knowledge through conventional means alone. Critics of the Scarab theory point to these evidentiary gaps. The eye markings on scarabs might simply be natural patterns or artistic motifs common throughout the lands between. The creatures appear in locations where no human agent could survive, suggesting they serve other purposes rather than intelligence gathering. Their behavior when threatened, fleeing rather than reporting, does not match what one would expect from surveillance devices. And most damning, the lore explicitly attributes other purposes to various scarab types, none of which mention intelligence gathering. The teardrop scarabs specifically are described as carrying blessed dew of the Erd tree, condensed into tears. This suggests a religious or a natural function rather than intelligence. They serve as mobile containers for sacred liquid, not as observation posts. The eye markings might simply represent their connection to the Erd tree, whose golden light is often associated with seeing and knowing, without implying any relationship to Gideon's spy network. Yet, the theory persists because it addresses a genuine puzzle. How does Gideon know so much while rarely leaving his study? Human agents can only observe what occurs in their presence, can only travel so far, and can only survive in certain environments. The breadth and depth of Gideon's knowledge seems to exceed what traditional spying could accomplish. Supernatural surveillance offers an explanation for this discrepancy, a means by which the all-knowing could truly monitor most of the lands between, despite the limitations of human intelligence gathering. If we entertain the theory seriously, examine what it would mean for Gideon's operations. Scarabs could serve as remote observation posts, their eyes literally becoming Gideon's eyes through some sort of magical connection. They could record events, storing sensory information to be retrieved when Gideon or his agents collect them. They could transmit information somehow, sending reports back to the Round Table Hold through arcane means. Or they might simply serve as markers, their presence in the location indicating that Gideon has identified that spot as significant and worth watching through other means. The magical mechanisms that would enable such surveillance remain speculative. Perhaps Gideon maintains mental connections to the scarabs, seeing through their eyes in real time. Perhaps he uses some sort of scrying to access their stored memories. Perhaps the scarabs are not natural creatures at all, but magical constructs created specifically for intelligence purposes. The game provides insufficient information to confirm or deny any of these possibilities, leaving the entire theory in the realm of interpretation rather than established fact. The counterintelligence implications would be staggering if this theory is true. Anyone operating in the lands between would be under near constant surveillance, observed by creatures so common and so seemingly harmless that most people would not even notice them. Every conversation near a scarab could be overheard, every action observed, every secret compromised. The network of human agents wearing eye surcoats would represent only the visible portion of a much larger surveillance apparatus, with the scarabs providing the true breadth of coverage. However, this creates logical problems. If Gideon possesses such comprehensive surveillance capability, why does he not know the location of the Halig tree? Why does Mogwin Palace remain hidden from him? Why does he seem genuinely surprised by the information you bring him? Omnipresent surveillance should eliminate these blind spots, yet they clearly exist. This suggests either the Scarab theory is false, or the surveillance capability has significant limitations not immediately apparent. Perhaps scarabs can only observe, not understand. They might record visual and auditory information without the context necessary to interpret its significance. An agent wearing an eye surcoat possesses intelligence, can assess situations, can recognize important information when they encounter it. A scarab, even if magically connected to Gideon, would lack this discriminatory capability. It would provide raw sensory data that must be reviewed and analyzed, a time-consuming process that limits the practical utility of widespread surveillance. Alternatively, perhaps maintaining magical connection to numerous scarabs scattered across vast distances requires constant attention and energy that Gideon cannot sustain indefinitely. He might selectively monitor specific scarabs rather than maintaining constant awareness of all of them, creating gaps in coverage. Or perhaps the magical connection degrades with distance, making scarabs in remote locations less useful for surveillance than those closer to the round table hold. The symbolic resonance of the scarab theory deserves consideration even if it proves literally false. Gideon's network operates through such observation, through eyes everywhere, through the accumulation of small details into comprehensive knowledge. The scarabs, whatever their actual purpose, embody the surveillance theme. They watch, they scurry through the world, recording its secrets. They appear in unexpected places, like hidden observers. Even if they are not literally Gideon's spies, they represent the idea of omnipresent surveillance, the possibility that you are always being watched, that nothing in the lands between escapes observation. This psychological dimension may be more important than the literal reality. The mere possibility that scarabs serve as surveillance devices creates uncertainty and paranoia. Tarnished adventuring through the lands between might find themselves wondering if that beetle they just passed is reporting their movements to Gideon. This uncertainty, this knowledge that you might be under observation without any way to confirm or refute it, exerts subtle pressure on behavior and decision-making. The Scarab theory functions as psychological operation, even if the physical surveillance does not occur. The relationship between observation and knowledge in Elden Ring's metaphysics also bears on this question. Eyes consistently associated with knowledge and power throughout the game. The greater will itself is sometimes represented as a massive eye. The frenzied flame manifests through the eyes. Gideon decorates his armor with eyes and ears, marking himself as one who sees and hears everything. In this symbolic framework, the eye markings on scarabs might represent their connection to knowledge and observation, without necessarily implying direct intelligence gathering for Gideon specifically. Various types of scarabs throughout the lands between serve different purposes. Some carry incantations or sorceries, dropping them when killed. Others carry weapon skills or unique items. This diversity suggests scarabs serve multiple functions within the world's ecology and magical systems. If some types serve other purposes, perhaps teardrop scarabs or eye-marked variants specifically serve intelligence functions, while other scarab types do not. This would explain why some scarabs appear in locations disconnected from any obvious intelligence value, while others appear positioned for optimal surveillance. The technical capabilities required for such surveillance exceed anything directly demonstrated in the game. While magic in Elden Ring accomplishes many impressive feats, direct mind-to-mind connection across vast distances, real-time transmission of sensory data, or reliable information storage in living creatures would represent extraordinary achievements. Gideon has lost his alliance with Seluvis, who might have provided such capabilities. Where would Gideon gain access to magic sophisticated enough to use scarabs as surveillance devices? The question has no clear answer, which undermines the theory's plausibility. Yet, the allure of the scarab theory persists, precisely because it cannot be definitively disproven. The game neither confirms nor denies it, leaving space for interpretation and speculation. Players notice the eye markings, observe the distribution patterns, recognize the thematic resonance, and construct an explanation that makes sense of Gideon's seemingly inexplicable knowledge. The theory fills a gap, answers a question, provides coherence to details that might otherwise seem random or meaningless. From a storytelling perspective, leaving such theories ambiguous serves important purpose. It creates atmosphere, generating uncertainty about what Gideon knows and how he knows it. It encourages player engagement, inviting them to notice details and construct interpretations. It allows multiple readings of the text, supporting different understandings without invalidating any of them. The Scarab theory exists in a space of productive ambiguity, neither confirmed nor denied, available as interpretive framework for those who find it compelling, while remaining optional for those who do not. The practical impact on players encountering scarabs throughout their journey adds another layer to considering this theory. If you believe scarabs might be Gideon's surveillance devices, you experience the world differently. That beetle near the site of grace becomes a potential observer, watching your actions, reporting your progress. The act of killing scarabs for their drops takes on different implications, potentially destroying surveillance devices, or at least disrupting Gideon's intelligence gathering. The world feels so much more watched, more surveilled, less safe even in remote locations. The ultimate answer to whether scarabs serve as Gideon's surveillance network probably lies somewhere between complete confirmation and total dismissal. Perhaps they provide some limited intelligence function without being the comprehensive surveillance system the theory suggests. Perhaps Gideon uses them opportunistically, gaining occasional information when he happens to connect with scarabs in interesting locations, without maintaining constant coverage. Perhaps the connection is metaphorical rather than literal, the scarabs representing the idea of omnipresent observation without actually functioning as surveillance devices. What remains certain is that Gideon gathers information through methods beyond the human agents directly demonstrated in the game. Whether through scarabs, through magic, through deals with entities we never meet, or through means we cannot identify. He knows more than conventional spying alone would suggest. The scarab theory represents one attempt to explain this excess knowledge, to account for capabilities that seem supernatural. Even if the specific mechanism proves incorrect, the underlying intuition is sound. Gideon's intelligence gathering extends beyond what we directly observe, reaching into realms of possibility that conventional analysis cannot fully capture. The truth behind Gideon Ofnir's spy network reveals one of Elden Ring's most quietly tragic stories. Behind the scholarly facade of the all-knowing lay a ruthless intelligence apparatus built on exploitation, manipulation, and the broken lives of those who served him. From Ensha's silent vigil to Nepheli's shattered trust, from the nameless corpse in Rykard's arena to Dolores' eternal puppetry, the network's agents paid prices their master never acknowledged. And when Gideon finally obtained the knowledge he sought above all else, it destroyed him more completely than any blade could have. His empty study in the Round Table hold stands as a monument to a fundamental truth, that information without wisdom is burden rather than power, that knowledge alone cannot substantiate for genuine strength, and that those who build empires on the suffering of others leave nothing behind but cautionary tales and abandoned rooms filled with books that no one will ever read. If you enjoyed this exploration of Gideon's hidden machinations, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are countless more secrets buried in the lands between, and I'll be here to uncover them with you. Rest well, and thank you for listening.